Well, more than 100,000 New Mexicans care for a loved one with dementia or Alzheimer's disease, which can be so stressful and overwhelming. But the more information and support you have, the better you can navigate the demanding road ahead. November is National Alzheimer's Month, and you will find plenty of support at Saturday's Alzheimer's Caregiver Conference at Sandia Resort and Casino. And today we're going to talk about that conference and a little bit more about the disease with our guest, Dr. Lena Smith, who is co-founder of the Retreat and Alzheimer's Specialty Care Facility in Rio Rancho, and Melissa Spiers, who is the outreach director for the New Mexico Alzheimer's Association. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having us.
I'm glad to have you on this morning. Such an important topic to talk about, and one that can be tough at times, especially when you get that first diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. What is the first conversation that the patient and the caregiver should have when you get this diagnosis?
Well, getting the diagnosis is definitely a difficult time. And interestingly enough, there was a study just this year that found that only about a third of families, when they receive the diagnosis, actually get information about resources. So as you get this information, one of the first things you want to talk about is what resources are in your community, what physicians, what practitioners, Alzheimer's Association, or other related organizations related to that diagnosis. Information's the key, and learning skills will help as the disease progresses.
Okay, now Melissa, what kind of important decisions should you be making sooner rather than later?
Well, I don't think you can plan early enough, but unfortunately sometimes it takes a crisis to get that information. But I think making sure that you have somebody that can help you make decisions later on, making your wishes known, and then thinking about how would I like to live my life later on if I do need care. Would I like it in the home? Would I like to be in a facility? Or am I going to have family to support me? Right,
so a lot of decisions that have to be made, and you kind of want to get a head start on this, and I'm sure there are some early warning signs that maybe someone has dementia or is getting close to that point, or Alzheimer's. How do you know? How do you tell the difference between someone who's getting older and just forgetful versus perhaps dementia or Alzheimer's, and then what do you do about it?
I don't think that you should assume that getting older means being forgetful. Correct. I think as people age, for the most part, we age gracefully. We have some changes on our abilities at times, but for the most part, if you are seeing changes in memory, in personality, in decision making, in your ability to cope with everyday normal skills, these are indications that there's something going on. As practitioners, the first thing we're going to do is make sure there's not something medical, something reversible. So getting it to a physician is very important, being open about what you're seeing, either as the patient themselves or as a family member, but you've got to reach out, you've got to tell somebody there's changes in the household.
Right, and sometimes, or a lot of times, the earlier you can catch this, can you kind of push away some of the worst, the bad symptoms of Alzheimer's? Can you kind of prolong maybe some of the better memory?
Well, I can tell you there are not great medicines at this point that reverse this condition, but there are strategies that people can learn. There are medications that can help with symptoms, and the sooner you're finding support systems, the better you will be in managing the disease as it progresses. So early intervention is very important. Getting information is very important, but probably most importantly, getting support. And that's really what the Caregivers Conference is also all about.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Is that the main message for this year's conference, and what else are you going to be talking about?
Well, we'll have a number of different topics, anywhere from how to better manage care, knowing what resources are available, knowing how to manage the resources that are needed to provide care for Alzheimer's and dementia, and not just dementia. Any family caregiver could benefit from this conference.
And now, real quickly, dementia, Alzheimer's. What's the difference there?
Dementia is the big word, and there are lots of types of dementia. Alzheimer's is one type. It is the most common type, so we hear a lot about it. But there are other types of dementia: Lewy body dementia, cardiovascular dementias. And so, as you work with a good, experienced practitioner, you might get more information about the type of dementia that you work with, but ultimately the prognosis is similar, and the skills that you use to cope are very similar. But Alzheimer's is one type that we most commonly hear about.
And you were just talking about how you can see personality changes. Sometimes that's a symptom. Now, how do you cope with that? Because I think a lot of times it seems like people who are getting dementia or Alzheimer's, they get kind of cranky, and a lot of times they don't want to admit that they're having memory issues. What do you do? How do you deal with that?
Well, I think that sometimes what we see is fear and the lack of coping skills because of the disease process. Later on, in more moderate and later stages of the disease, the brain simply is not able to cope with everyday environments and stimulus, and you will see agitation. But in our earlier stages, a lot of times this could really be depression, fear, and getting involved with a practitioner, with an organization can help. Later on, we do use medicines to help folks cope with those more advanced stages of the disease.
Now, what audience or what type of people do you think should come to this conference? Like, people, it's just something that you should come to even if you don't have a family member that's diagnosed with Alzheimer's, but maybe they're starting to show signs of dementia. Is this for everybody?
Absolutely. I think it will benefit anybody who is a caregiver or has the potential to be a caregiver. And it's not, like I mentioned earlier, not just dementia specific. Anyone who's caring for a loved one that needs resources about how to be more effective, how to do it the right way, and just know that there's support and they're not alone. And Lena's actually going to be talking about the benefits of caregiving.
Okay, great. Well, this sounds like a great conference. What do you want attendees to take away from this year's conference?
That they're not alone and that there are resources available. And there are benefits to caregiving. So many times we focus on the stressful aspects of that, and there are many benefits to it. So we're excited to hear Lena's.
Great joys in being of assistance to someone that you care for and that you love. And so we're going to focus on strengths, definitely talk about education. There are great practitioners, physicians and other folks presenting at this conference, and it's free to any family caregiver. That's amazing. The City of Albuquerque and the Alzheimer's Association, people should take advantage.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now, how can people actually register for the Alzheimer's Caregiver Conference?
They can simply call the association at 505-266-4473. They can also download the registration brochure on our website, which is www.alz.org/New Mexico.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I know you guys do so much, Melissa, for raising money and awareness for Alzheimer's, so definitely want to get the word out there and get some people to the conference. Well, coming up next, we'll tell you about the Doggy Dash and Dada. It's the Canine Social Event of the Year. Stick around.